Thank you for jumping back on the channel. We got some exciting news today because if you've been paying attention to the channel over the past few days, we've been talking about, in our gaming vlog series, a little bit about what expectations we have for 2023, what are the plans for the future, just a little bit about where we're all heading, right? And lo and behold, the president of Square Enix has went ahead and published his New Year's letter. Now, he's followed the same topics that he covered in 2022, but I think it's really important, especially if you're interested in Web3 gaming and blockchain technology, to read through the article and get a little bit of understanding of his perspective. You got to remember, being at one of the top gaming organizations in the entire world, he has a significant amount of information, more than the gamers that are simply the consumers of the company's products. But I don't want to read necessarily the entire letter today, but I do want to just go through a little summary for you and let you, on your own time, go ahead and read through it. I came across some really fascinating things, and let's just get started, and I'll give you a little bit of commentary as we go. But he pretty much starts the letter by just giving us a background on the backdrop of how he sees the world right now. You know, the entire world's coming out of the COVID pandemic. And all the emergency funding that was needed in order to get through that time. Inflation has been soaring. The entire world markets have been on a very large downturn. A lot of us are already experiencing that. It doesn't matter if you're in crypto, real estate, stocks. It's hitting everybody all around the world at the same time. Interest rates as well. So he starts to lay that foundational groundwork in the beginning of his article. But he pretty much says that with some of these changes that he's seen over the past couple years, it's led the business to go ahead and look to restructuring pretty much. So if you've been following any of the news with Square Enix, you would know that a few months ago, I believe in the beginning of 2022, they went ahead and they sold off 3 of their major studios: Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal. Now, they sold these to the Embracer Group. So I believe this was a couple months before Microsoft made its big acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Now, and at the time, a lot of people were speculating that this was a money grab because obviously before the markets had really taken a big dip, it was the opportunity to sell off some of your IP to be able to capitalize on the value that it had attained from all of this money printing. But people were really wondering what was going to happen next. Most gamers are following their favorite IPs, whether it's Tomb Raider or Thief or any of the other ones that are involved with the studios. We're yet to see what Embracer Group decides to do with that IP, and maybe it's going to come out to be a really great thing. But from Square Enix's perspective, they pretty much are using that transition to go ahead and focus on their core IP that they like to deem it, and setting up a new business model, midterm goals, I guess you could say. So obviously he talks about this near the middle of the article, and the reasons for doing it, right? As you can see here, they start to reconfigure our group's portfolio of titles for the medium to long term. And they also provide some additional information in their PowerPoint presentation that goes through some of these things in more detail. Now, one of the main reasons that they're divesting they're trying to create a new method of publishing, where the entire Square Enix company is able to operate as one throughout the entire world and throughout all these different jurisdictions. Jurisdictions is very important, and we're going to come back to that later. But they pretty much talk about how they created a new role called the Chief Publishing Officers. Now, I believe there's 2 officers right now. Maybe that's going to come back down to 1. But these new officers are supposed to implement this new concept of the One Square Enix vision. And again, this idea of how this large organization can publish games, not only in Japan, but in the United States, in Eastern Europe, in pretty much all around the world. That's going to be their short-term focus, or at least one of their focuses over the course of 2023. Okay, but now we get to the really interesting thing here, and this is where I'm going to read directly from the article. One of the other items that they're focusing on is adding new business domains, and we'll just get straight into the letter here as we start. In terms of new business domains, we named 3 focused investment fields under our medium-term business plan. Among those, we are the most focused on blockchain entertainment, to which we have devoted aggressive investment and business development efforts. Looking externally, I think it's fair to say that blockchain gained significant recognition as a field in 2022, as evidenced by the Web3 becoming a firmly established buzzword amongst business people. However, the year also saw volatility in cryptocurrency and NFT markets that tracked with a dramatic shift in the macroeconomics described above. The latter half of the year, in particular, produced a sombering string of news stories with blockchain connections, including the scandal, bankruptcy scandal of FTX. So, what do I take from this article immediately? We know that they've made a heavy investment, or at least allocated a lot of resources to the development of blockchain, how they deem and entitle blockchain entertainment. Maybe some of the reasons for selling off their other studios was this idea of being able to use that money for funding. From my perspective, and this is simply opinion, I kind of get the feeling that we're going back again to the East versus West mentality. What are the 3 things that the studios they sold off have in common? They're all Western-based studios. Maybe this is a coincidence that it's happening at the same time that Western-based audiences are also fighting back against NFTs, where Eastern audiences are actually more accepting of it. Again, speculation. To continue with the letter, he says, in the wake of these developments, we're hearing rumblings about some countries of early moves to regulate such businesses more strictly. In Japan, meanwhile, the drive to encourage such businesses has gained momentum, led by the government. In June 2022, the Japanese cabinet signed off on a plan called the Priority Policy Program for Realizing a Digital Society, which includes wording regarding the creation of an environment for promoting the Web3 concept, including the use of NFTs based on blockchain technology, and the creation of the Japan's digital agency. So you can see here, there's obviously governmental trends that are coming, and we also talked about this in one of our previous blogs about how 2023 and 2024 is likely going to be the years in which we start to see governments have a stronger foothold in blockchain technology and the Web3 industry. So this can look a bunch of different ways, but from what we've seen, governments around the world are starting to fund projects to be able to create some of these new digital metaverse societies, and at least at this point to discuss the concepts of what it should look like and how to best realize that vision. Who knows if that's actually going to play out or not, but the trend here is that governments are funding these things, and I wouldn't be surprised if in terms of their publishing efforts, that they're focusing on the jurisdictions, like we were saying earlier, around the world that are actually providing the most incentive for businesses like Square Enix to be able to build and grow. I would expect that to be a major focus of them, of their publishing arm, in this new One Square Enix vision that they have. You know, towards the end of the article, you know, they talk a little bit about how the NFT space and crypto space was obviously going through an extremely large bull market where speculation became too frothy, which led to a lot of downfall of some of these crypto projects. But needless to say, the demand, at least at one point, was there. My expectation is that we're going to see it again with the companies and the projects that survive this bear market and come out the other side stronger than ever. Let's see here. They're going to, continuing on with the article, new technologies and framework lead to innovation, but they also create considerable confusion. So this is part of the education process. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the phrase about you just don't get it when it comes to crypto. And that's not the best way to phrase it. The way to phrase it is pretty much that this technology is very complicated, and in order to really have a full understanding, an in-depth understanding, takes hours and hours and hours of research. I can tell you, I've put in more hours studying this stuff than I did to pass the CPA exam, and I'm still barely understanding the surface level of all of this. new technologies. And on top of that, everything's changing every single day. Regardless, they say in the article, keeping a steady eye on these environmental changes while considering from a higher level perspective what Web3 and blockchain entertainment will actually all present a different vista than if we were to focus solely on technology or speculative investment. I think, well said. You need to really have a really in-depth understanding of all of this. Continuing on, multiple blockchain gaming events held overseas recently produced more active discussions than ever before about what makes the games exciting from their user communities look. Now, it's hard to say here what their perspective is. Maybe they got a little too heavy-handed in terms of their investments, and they are gotten to the point of no return, where they're able to only focus on this because of the amount of investment that they've already put in, and they've decided to lead the charge. Perhaps that's the case. Perhaps they significantly believe in the potential of the technology and how it could affect, the gaming industry in the long term. Obviously, from what they're writing and from what they're saying, the latter is more likely the case. But they're going to continue pushing forward with this. Other than that, they pretty much finished the article by just saying this is going to be the 20th year anniversary of the merger between Enix and Square, and he wishes everyone a new and happy new year of 2023. So, going back to this article, when they were describing some of their mid-term and long-term goals, they went ahead and put out some PowerPoints on these topics. Now, we're not going to go through, and as we switch over, we're not going to go through the entire 33 slides. We're just going to focus directly here on what you all are most interested in, which is the blockchain gaming aspect of it. So, Square Enix, and this is how they describe their perspective to their shareholders and their investors, their medium-term business strategy is pretty much broken down into three categories. Strengthening their current IP ecosystem, which we all know, Final Fantasy, the development of their MMOs, they want to continue pushing forward on a lot of that. They want to take on new domains as step number 2, which is where they're going to focus on the promoting of blockchain entertainment as a domain and the investment arm of that as well. And then 3, they want to optimize the business for a COVID world. And when I hear this, he's commented about the world attempting to come out of COVID. Right now with the holiday season, we know that COVID is continuing to spread and we're no way past it. However, when I hear this transition of business structure, I start thinking about how can the business itself become more digitized. Already video games are leading that focus, I guess you could say, and they're just wanting to push it to the next level. In coordination with this new investment from the government of Japan about creating a digital society, it makes a bit of sense to me. So going down to how they describe it. Their midterm business strategy about taking on new domains kind of breaks down into 2 different things right now. The creation of a blockchain entertainment business division, which they already did in February 2022, and then the release of season 1 of Shisansi Million Arthur was completed in March 2022. And of note, they do note here that encouraged by the results and feedback from their NFT business, they decided to produce a second season. And this goes back again to the idea that Eastern audiences may be more willing and more excited about accepting blockchain technology into video games than the West does. My expectation is that if this trend continues, or if a game anywhere around the world were to receive mass adoption, then I wouldn't be surprised if that starts to change some of the trends that Western audiences are currently fighting back against. Once good content comes out, that's all that's really going to matter. Everything else is going to add to the realism and the depth of play, the way that they describe it in these games by using this technology. And we're way too early to understand how big of an impact it can or how small of an impact it will have. But regardless, this is one of the leading companies that's going to be pushing forward the ideas. To continue forward with slide 29, they are promoting the blockchain entertainment domain, and I like the way that they say blockchain entertainment domain. obviously focusing on not only just games but other types of entertainment. They want to hit on these big topics, right? Initiating, innovating to establish regulatory clarity for guidelines in blockchain games. And this I thought was really important. When I had just started with blockchain games, I was assuming that the fight back was going to be that these economies were going to remain closed because governments all around the world were going to say, hey, you can't have an open economy in a video game that touches every person in the entire world, because that's a method for money laundering or for tax sheltering, which is a legitimate argument. But in actuality, in actual practice, there's too many games and too many players of these games for, I guess, world governments to actually focus that as their main argument. Instead, they'll probably choose to regulate in a different manner, more than likely going through the tax side first. It's almost always the easiest way. Of course, maybe that's me speaking as a CPA. They want to also tackle scalability in NFT economic zones and experiences. So NFT economic zones goes back to the idea, like I said, where jurisdictions around the world are going to provide incentives for building. They want to issue exclusive fungible tokens and design earning structures for communities. These are guilds, governances, user-generated content, and continue to build or continue on focusing on world building, creative IP and brands. Makes complete sense. They also are going to hit on a financing division where I would expect that they're going to continue to invest directly in the development of the technology and by acquiring businesses that are focusing on it. But they've clearly also said that they're going to be looking to establish overseas entities. Again, we talked about the idea, at least in the United States, how some of the regulations could hinder development and force it offshore. And that's exactly what Square Enix is looking at. If they're hindered in one area of the world, they're going to want to focus on an area where they're more easily able to pursue forward with their ideas and their plans, to see if it actually is going to work out. And to end here, in terms of the domains that they are already investing in, Animoca Brands, probably one of the thought leaders in crypto gaming as it is right now. The Sandbox, which, right now I haven't actually had the ability to play the Sandbox just yet or get involved. I understand the concept of the user-generated content to match along with Roblox, but so many different people have focused major investment in the Sandbox that I wouldn't be surprised that over the next few years with growth, Square Enix will continue to do so and even maybe push some of their content and their direct IP further into the Sandbox to be able to take advantage of that decentralized metaverse. So in wrapping, I would say that Square Enix is definitely going to be pushing the envelope forward, and I'm excited to see how they decide to do that over the course of 2023 and 2024. What is really important here, and you'll know if you've been playing crypto games, or if you're brand new, you'll take note of this. But many of the times when we're researching games, or you're playing a game and you want to know whether or not it's a good investment, quote unquote, for you to go ahead and put in to maybe buy one of the rarest swords or be able to acquire a very scarce resource, you ultimately ask yourself, what do you see for the future of the game? You ultimately ask yourself, what do you see for the future of the game? And will the developers be able to meet that expectation or those goals? The answer is that we don't know. And it's very difficult for small indie developers to be able to provide the same type of financial information and breakdown of their business goals and plans and achievements as a public company is, like Square Enix. They're required by law to be able to put out statements and be able to put out their financials to show how things have progressed or how things have failed. It makes the financial aspect of the company more transparent, which I think will be very important to evaluate as projects continue to grow. So those are some of my thoughts regarding the news of the Square Enix letter, as published by Yosuke Matsuda, the president of Square Enix Holdings. I hope you guys enjoyed the content and hopefully had some thought-provoking ideas. Again, maybe some of my ideas may be off base, they may not be, we'll be paying attention to this development over the course of the next few years to see exactly whether or not Square Enix can live up to the demand.